Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jerry Cooey.
I'm Deborah Nelson.
So we want to welcome you to the show, and always want to give out a shout out to Amalia, our rep that takes care of us so well at MediaCom, and she is always willing to talk to me even when it's just aggravating talk.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. We've had over 2 years now.
Over two. We're rolling into 2.5 years now.
Over 2 years with MediaCom, and we have certainly enjoyed the partnership. And we had somebody recently, say, hey, one thing I'll have to say about your TV show is you tell it like it is. And I said, well, not only do we tell it like it is, but we have the research and documentation to back it up.
Yeah, that's the important thing.
And look, folks, Deborah and I, we take great pride in the fact that a lot of stuff that we talk about on this TV show, no other news media from here to the Mississippi River would even consider it. And I think it's important. I guess we fall in the category of, well, the regular news media would call us alternative media. I say we're the real media, and they are not alternative because they continue to do stories about weeds in the media.
Yeah, that order is starting to flip, and
Right.
that's nationwide.
Right. I talk to a lot of folks that look at other sources besides the quote unquote large media outlets to get their news from. So,
Well, originally newspapers way back when, before Hearst and all those people, started out as not a hobby, but it started out as individuals wanted to get information out, and
Right.
there were no advertisers, and so there were no issues with this advertiser doesn't like that story.
Right.
And then it morphed into what it is today, and now that's looking like that's harder and harder to sustain for the mainstream media.
Well, one time, and look, folks, Deborah has been present on a couple of these conversations, but I have conversations with members of the media via face-to-face or email from time to time, and I just have to challenge, what importance is this story to anyone that gets touted on the front page of the newspaper when there are so many other stories that I believe. When you look at the history of the newspaper business, I'm reminded of the young kid on the corner, hear ye, read all about it.
Yeah.
It is the responsibility of the media, and on top of that, they have constitutional protections so that they get the real story.
Well,
out
their
there.
problem is they don't have any constitutional protection when they can't make payroll because they don't have the advertisers, which is what the problem is. They just don't have the money. They're not sustainable as far as that old-timey business model.
Well, and to a certain degree, I agree with that, and I understand that. I also understand that if you have a hopping news media gathering outlet that tells the truth, don't tell me how to feel about a story, tell me the story and let me decide. I think you will more than make it up with other advertisers and with your circulation of your newspaper.
We'd be pleased to have advertisers.
Well, hey, until Santa Rosa Week TV does have advertisers, it'll still be our show, and we'll say what we want to.
It'll be our show afterwards too.
Well, folks, we do want to recognize this is a sad thing that we need to talk about for a minute. Now, I don't know how many of you might know this gentleman. I have kind of followed his, I would call it, career, or his community activism. I certainly knew about him long before he knew about me. Mr. Leroy Boyd, he was one of the leaders of Movement for Change. He fell ill this past week and has recently passed away. And I want to share with you, one thing in particular, that during the McNesby administration as the sheriff in Escambia County, there seemed to be a larger number of deaths in the jail that the odds would say was possible. And folks, I want to tell you, Leroy Boyd, specifically him and many members of his organization, stood tall. They stuck their personal necks out, and they finally got to a point now. To date, I still don't know if anything's going to come of it, but they did escalate it to the point that the U.S. Justice Department has come to the Escambia County Jail and has looked at, actually spent months and months there looking at things that have gone on. And Leroy, I had the pleasure of meeting him in Tallahassee at the Maritime Park lawsuit at the appellate court.
Yeah, he stuck his neck out on that one too.
Also stuck his neck out on that one, and the community has lost a great warrior in Leroy Boyd. So you know, we want to give our condolences to the folks that knew him, certainly his family members, and look, for those of you who watch this show, we need somebody to replace Mr. Leroy Boyd. It'll probably take about six to a dozen of you to do what he accomplished in his life, but somebody needs to step up.
He was one of the key squeaky wheels over there. And you know, that's a shrinking pool in this area.
Absolutely.
Of people that are willing to stand up and make their voices heard.
Yeah, and he was certainly a giant in defending the citizens' rights in Escambia County. So once again, our condolences go to the family. We were kicking things around, and Deborah and I talked about it, and I'm just going to have to throw it out there. In our pre-election coverage, we opened up this TV program for any of the candidates that, you know, here's free time, say what you want. And there was one candidate that ducked us and dodged us and just wouldn't take the time to do it, and that was Commissioner Gordon Gooden. And I say that to say this: of all of the candidates, he was the only one who didn't take opportunity to be on the powerful Santa Rosa Week TV programming, and he lost his election. So the story that I'm going to say is that had he have come on Santa Rosa Week TV, he might have won.
He'd have gotten the Santa Rosa Week bump. He missed out on the bump.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, and Deborah, it'll probably be a little while before I finally don't say this anymore. But once again, I'd just like to say, Bill McCullum, I wish you the best in your retirement. It couldn't happen to a better person. Jeff Kottkamp, the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Florida, wish you the best of luck in your retirement. That you were eliminated in the primaries this year. Now, back to McCullum. He is still the sitting Attorney General, so I'm sure a lot of folks have seen this in some of the media, but they had the court case recently. And just to refresh you, 19 attorney generals across the U.S. gathered together in one lawsuit. That lawsuit was filed at, amazingly enough, in the Escambia County Federal Courthouse. And it got past its first hurdle yesterday. The first hurdle was you have to prove to the court that you have cause to have this, that you can be injured in this.
And let's just quickly recap what the issue is here. You've got a bill or a law now that's actually telling each and every American you must buy something from a private company.
Right.
And it's up to them as to how they set the rates.
Right.
And this is in an industry that you go back to the dawn of time. Probably go back to cave people. This industry does not operate like a normal market. You know, somebody's child is sick. You know, somebody's leg is broken and dangling off. You don't shop around and apply market forces to get the best price. You're desperate. People are desperate who are consumers in this industry. It does not work like a market. And you've got this ridiculous market, quote unquote, solution where you have, of course, the public option would have mitigated that, and they managed to in their
get rid of
usual
that.
congressional job to get rid of that. But you're now forcing people to buy from these companies, these corporations that are just wealthy beyond belief from sucking people dry.
Right.
And that's the issue, is should Americans be forced to buy something from a private company?
Right. Well, look, folks. If you've watched any of our shows, one thing that you should know, we both believe in the Constitution, and I am firmly on the side of states' rights in this. The federal government, and this is one thing, and we've covered it on many topics. We have a federal government, a cradle to grave mentality. We will exercise our power over you in every single facet of your life. And I agree with this lawsuit, folks.
Well, see, I differ. I don't see that. What they did was they did a halfway measure that actually managed to make things worse, make a bad situation worse. And of course, you know, my position is single payer healthcare is really the only viable solution.
And cross state lines, so that there's competition.
Well, if it's single payer, it's basically Medicare for everybody.
Right.
The government is the insurance provider.
Well, there you go, folks. Sometimes I wonder how I can sit here beside her, but that's okay.
Again, this is an industry where it's just never going to operate like a market. Cars, you know, automobiles, clothing, just about anything else you throw to market forces. Something that's a matter of life and death, which this is, you can't run it on the market system. And eventually it's going to have to become, if we want to be a civilized society, continue to be civilized, it's going to have to go to single payer. But right now they've got this halfway measure that's, I can tell you, our insurance rates have been jacked up considerably.
Right.
I think everybody else that's having the same experience.
Well, and look, and I'm fortunate. I consider myself to have a good insurance provider at this time. When this thing was passed, immediately the scary emails started going out about we'll have to look at this, we'll have to manage this, and right out of the gate there was already adjustments made that certainly didn't help me.
Right.
And I, like most folks, it's usually towards the end of the year where everything is negotiated for the following year. I'm going to be very scared to see what may come out of it because of this. It could be a sizable increase.
Well, people are going to truly experience the greed of the private insurance industry is what's going to happen. It's already happening. It's been happening.
Right.
We saw that with the movie Sicko, which I'm sure you didn't see. For people who have paid into the insurance system all their lives, go and one guy had 2 fingers cut off, and the insurance company said, well, we'll only replace one of your fingers. We'll only sew one back on.
Well, that was nice.
But people are going to truly understand how greedy these companies are, and maybe that'll turn the tide towards single payer. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, it's an absolute mess. This lawsuit is also right at the top of my list on the states' rights issue. The states, the powers of the federal government are enumerated in the Constitution, and then it says,
does it say promote the general welfare? Promote the general welfare.
It says if it is not specifically lined out of the powers of the federal government, everything else is states' rights. And
we need an amendment.
yeah. Well, I wish you good luck on that. And folks, we want to also warm you up, and we'll have to say I was a little disappointed in voter turnout. Actually, I was massively disappointed in voter turnout. But I would like to remind you that there is an election on November the 2nd.